This video will contain spoilers from the off, so remember, you've been warned. Black Mirror, a show that gives us a look into society in the not-so-distant future that's developed advanced tech. It's an interesting concept. However, one large thing that makes up Black Mirror's DNA is the fact that the demise of a character is something that's also present due to its incorporation, and the sudden realization that it doesn't necessarily mean better. This has led to a number of dark endings in the show over the course of the 6 seasons and 28 episodes, and I thought I'd call out the darkest of them all and explain why. So let's get into it. Here are the darkest endings in Black Mirror. Number 5. Crocodile. Coming in 5th place and just about making the list of the darkest endings of the show is Crocodile. This was an episode that had dark undertones from the off. The fact that the main character Mia killed somebody and tried to cover it up was dark enough. However, it was in the final third where we saw this episode go to levels that we'd barely seen before. In utilizing the technology that enabled people to see inside of your mind and your memories, Mia kidnapped the investigator, Shazia, who saw that Mia was responsible for the murder. This in turn led Shazia to be kidnapped, having her memories looked into with the aim of finding out if anybody knew that she went to visit Mia, as if somebody did know, then Mia was going to take them out too. As Shazia's husband knew that she was going there, this then meant that Mia had a job to do in order to stay undetected. Mia killed Shazia. Then she went to her house, broke into it in a stealthy manner, killed Shazia's partner whilst he was in the bath in a brutal fashion. And then, one of the most horrific things in the entirety of Black Mirror happened. She killed Shazia's young baby. Despite not being able to speak, the baby saw Mia inside of the house, which meant that the memories could have been traced, and that would have done all the speaking itself. It was a sickening crime that Mia committed in order to not be found out by the authorities for the original crime. She basically tripled down on what she originally did, but she didn't count on the guinea pig being able to have its memories tapped into, which meant that although we didn't see it, she was most definitely caught. It was a dark ending that went to realms that the show had never been before, the butchering of a family in order to protect oneself. It was such a haunting episode. Number 4. White Bear. White Bear was a very dark episode of the show, focusing around Victoria Spillane, who was inside of the White Bear Justice Park. We saw that she was running away aimlessly from a figure who was making out like they wanted to capture her. We as the audience didn't have a clue what was happening and was just as in the dark as what she was. However, when the twist occurred, we saw just how twisted it was. Spillane was a murderer. Her and her boyfriend killed a young girl, and her punishment was that she essentially had to live the same day every day over and over again, being hunted by paying customers as they sought to get a look at the suffering that she was enduring without her even realizing. The pain that it looked as though she was in as she was having her memories wiped is something that has always stuck with me, and a lifetime of torture without knowing it is a pretty bleak way to spend your existence. It was that dark that it made me as a viewer question if it was morally okay for them to do what they were doing. Yes, she was a murderer, but doesn't this just make the public and others partaking on a level that isn't far off, enjoying the suffering of another? Number 3. White Christmas. White Christmas is most definitely one of the darkest episodes in the entirety of the show, for a number of different reasons, but most specifically for the ending. Not only did we see an individual get murdered, Joe's wife get killed, Greta's copy being forced to work inside of a cookie, Joe killing his father-in-law, and also Joe being blocked, but right at the end we saw that Joe was revealed to be a copy of himself, and all of the conversation that we saw happening didn't actually take place inside of reality, but instead inside of a cookie. It was revealed to us that Joe's partner's daughter went outside and ultimately froze to death due to the actions that Joe took in killing his father-in-law. After breaking down, Jon Hamm's character Matt revealed himself to be working with the authorities and went outside of the cookie as the confession was given. This was where the true darkness came to the forefront. Due to Matt partaking in the crime that we saw partaking earlier where the individual was killed, it meant that instead of going to prison and due to him cooperating with the authorities, he was allowed to go free. But everybody in existence would appear as a muffled blur that wasn't able to speak to him, essentially living an isolated life in a world that was full of people. Plus, he also appeared as a red blur to people, highlighting that he was a dangerous individual and for people to be fearful of him. But then it got worse. with us getting an understanding that time moves differently inside of a cookie. With Joe being left there all on his own, he was listening to the song "I Wish It Could Be Christmas" every day. And over the course of the weekend in real life, the timer was set to move extremely fast, meaning years could have passed by the end of the weekend. He was trapped, listening to the same song, being able to see the young girl in the distance in the snow, haunted by the life that he once dreamed of but ultimately destroyed. Number 2. Shut Up and Dance. Shut Up and Dance is definitely one of Black Mirror's darkest endings, and I'd have said up until this year it was the darkest. After following Kenny around carrying out tasks as he was trying to prevent a blackmailer from posting him doing something on his webcam online, he went to extreme lengths, robbing a bank and even killing a person with his bare hands in a fight that was being filmed by a drone. When it seemed as though the character that you were rooting for had won and had completed all of the tasks that the blackmailer wanted him to do, it turned out he wasn't free. A phone call came in from Kenny's mother, and all we heard was "Kids Kenny" being screamed down the phone as the emotion of disappointment and disgust was present as the blackmailer posted the video. This was met by an emotionless Kenny who did absolutely nothing, just moved the phone further away from his ear. As a viewer, we were rooting for Kenny before this happened. We just thought that he was being blackmailed. We didn't know that he had committed a crime. But the show gave us an unexpected, disgusting twist that made you no longer root for him, and it made sense as to why he was going to the extreme lengths that he did. Kenny, covered in blood, saw the blue sirens approaching and he didn't even have it in him to flee. He was an empty shell, and we saw Kenny go from being a young man to an emotionless murderer in the space of an hour. It was intense, it was dark, and it was powerful. What an ending. Arguably one of the most iconic endings. Number 1. Beyond the Sea. The ending to Beyond the Sea is the one that I think is the darkest that we've ever had in Black Mirror. We saw David and Cliff share a replica following David's family being slaughtered by a cult of individuals that didn't believe in the advancement of technology. And we saw this exact fate being met by Lana, Henry, and their dog right at the end. David was growing feelings for Lana, and he felt as though Cliff didn't appreciate what he had in front of him when he went back to Earth in his replica form. So he wanted to make Cliff realize what he didn't appreciate by taking them away. Plus, he also had the mindset of, well, if I can't have mine or them, you can't either. Meaning that when Cliff returned home in his replica after being trapped out in open space, a fate that I thought was going to be the cause of his demise, he awoke covered in blood and saw his family lying there. The fact that we didn't need to see them, but instead we saw the sheer amount of blood that was around the house, it showed just how horrific it must have been for them, and it made your imagination think of horrifying things. Then to be followed up by David kicking out a chair, knowing full well that Cliff couldn't do anything, because if he did, it meant that he died too. It was such a dark way to finish. The mission needed 2 people to operate the shuttle, as if there was only one, then it would fail, and they'd both die. Cliff had to sit there, working alongside the person who took everything he ever cared about away from him for the next 4 years, and he couldn't do anything about it. It made my stomach drop and was definitely Black Mirror's darkest ending. This was a hard list to pull together because there are many other episodes that have extremely dark endings. A couple that were close to making it on were Lock Henry, Metalhead, and Black Museum, but the 5 selected are the ones that I feel are the right choice. So, there you have it. The darkest endings in Black Mirror. If you want to see more videos such as endings explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button, or alternatively you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What do you think the darkest ending is? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.